Have you ever been preparing for a trip and just wonder, I forgot something? There was something I just left behind. I don't know what it is. I can't think, can't put my finger on it. Well, tonight we're going to answer some of those questions for you. Some of those travel tips that, before you get up, before you get going, you want to prepare yourself. You want to make sure that you're ready to have the greatest experience possible. Because listen, whether we're going to see family or friends, whether we're going to be traveling for work, what we really want is to enjoy that time and come home not feeling all beaten up. Because here's the thing. Oftentimes, in fact, the reason why we're having this conversation is because a lot of time what ends up happening is people go away, they travel, and they come back with a whole new slew of problems and issues. Damaged bodies. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's one of those things I really don't like because you know what? I always look forward to traveling. I always look forward to the experience. And yet, you know what? For some, it is just that time when we have this angst about us because of the unknown that's coming next. Well, my hope for you is as we have this conversation tonight about our travel tips, they're going to answer some questions for you. They're going to give you some things to focus on. They're going to enable you to protect yourself in the process and in turn come back rejuvenated. So, we're going to step into these pretty quickly because there's a good bit to cover here. Planes, trains, and automobiles. The only thing I can think of is good old Steve Martin and John Candy there. Listen, whether you're traveling on a plane, a train, or an automobile, these recommendations and these suggestions for you, they're going to apply. In fact, I'm going to start out by asking you a big favor. To share this information with your friends and family. Because here's the thing. When you know this information, what gives you the right and the ability to just hoard it to yourself? You need to be sharing this information with others to make sure that they too have these great experiences when you're traveling. In fact, you probably want to help them out. Because in the comments section, just like I want to see you leave me a takeaway. That one big thing that you're going to take away from this class, that you're going to take away from the conversation and start applying to what you do personally, share it with them. Because they're wondering, well, is it worth listening to? Well, if they see that you already have a takeaway, guess what? They're already figuring out, hey, there's something in there that might be worthwhile watching or listening to. Finally, hit that like button. Share this with your Facebook friends and family. All right? So we're going to start out with the car because you know what? Most of us have those four wheels. It's right in our driveway. It's probably the thing that we engage in the most, so we may as well talk about that first. And the wonderful thing is that the information that we're going to talk about in the car is going to apply to the plane and to the train also. So, let's dig into this because we need to prepare the body. Have you ever watched a football game before they actually start playing the game? I can remember going to the game as a kid with my dad and watching all of the players out on the field warming up. I mean, not just the quarterback, not just the wide receivers, but the running backs and even the kicker. In fact, if you watch on the sidelines, you'll see the kicker constantly throughout the course of the game continuing to stay warmed up in order to do what they need to do. Well, listen, you're no different. Getting in the car is an activity. It's an athletic event. We have to be preparing ourselves to engage. So you want to make sure that you're stretching out this body. And listen, this is a judgment-free zone. You want to do it in a way you want to do it. What makes you feel comfortable? I don't care if it's bending over to touch your toes, whether it's hanging from the ceiling, whether it's doing yoga stretches on the floor, whatever it is for you. But we do want to make sure that we're stretching this body out so that we're preparing these tissues and readying them for what's coming next. Now, you certainly, as a preparation too, you want to be taking that wallet out of your back pocket. No offense. Most guys, in fact, ladies, you're going to forgive me. I'm going to be speaking to my male patients and the male viewers right now because in the end, most ladies don't carry a wallet in their back pocket. But guys, we all do it. We've all been trained to do it. Now, for some of us, we've learned from our past experience. We recognize that, hey, listen, taking this thing that's supposed to only be about this thick and, making it about this thick and then sticking it underneath our butt cheek doesn't necessarily lead to our pelvis, our hips, staying nice and level. So I'm going to give you something I want you to try. All right? And for ladies out there, I want you to do this with your husbands. All right? Take their wallet, put it on the floor, and have them just take one of their heels and stand over top of that wallet. Now, what you're going to see is that those hips are going to be like this. Yeah, they're going to be jacked up. Of course they're going to be jacked up. You can't take something that's 2 inches high and stick it underneath your foot and imagine everything's going to be nice and level. No, we're going to be tilting to the side. Well, that's the same thing that's happening when we're shoving it underneath our butt cheek. Same exact thing. And the problem is that we've grown so used to it that we've forgotten about it. And we forget about the pattern that we accumulate over time. See, it's not the fact that we do it one time, it's the fact that we do it repetitively again and again and again. And we don't only do it for just 2-3 minutes, we're doing it for hours on end. So we're constantly training our body to be in that not so good position. Now, does this apply to the car? Yes. Does it apply to the plane? Yes. Or the train? Absolutely. But let me think. It applies to us at work. If we have a job that requires us to sit, well, these same principles apply in the workplace. So the suggestion is take that wallet out of your back pocket. We're not even going to talk about thinning it out, throwing out all the receipts, getting rid of the little tabs that you don't need anymore. All we want you to do is put it in your front pocket. Put it in your front pocket so that you're not sitting on it. If it's in your front pocket, guess what? It's not going to affect the level of your hips and your pelvis. Taking a big stress away. Because the problem is that when we wear that thing in our back pocket, it's going to constantly influence ourselves into a bad position. Now, yes, you'd want to wear comfortable clothes. That's a given. You don't want to be in a suit and tie as you're driving if you don't have to. Be comfortable. Like anything, it'll allow you to feel more relaxed. Now, finally, you do need to stay hydrated. Now, this is a really big thing, and it doesn't apply to just getting into the car or onto the plane or in the train. We should be doing this well ahead of time. We should be preparing our body for the event that's to come. And if you're going to be traveling on a plane, then guess what? You probably want to start about 2 days ahead of time with overhydrating. Because like you're going to learn, well, planes are notorious for having that recirculated air that's very dry, and it's literally just going to suck all of that moisture out of our body. And if we're not starting out with loading up, then guess what? Sooner rather than later, we're going to be behind the 8 ball, and we're going to have a problem. So, whether you're traveling for 30 minutes or 3 hours, it doesn't matter. These principles absolutely apply. Posture is one of those keys to success. Let's understand, you see this guy. This is the norm. The problem is that it makes a really bad situation even worse. If you've never watched a video on how your low back is affected by sitting, you need to view that. One of the biggest things that we teach our patients is, ideally, the spine is supposed to be in a nice straight line from behind, but from the side it's supposed to be curved. Not looking like a turtle like this guy, though. See, when we sit, we're supposed to have that nice 45 to 60 degree curve in that low back of ours. We're supposed to see that nice curve going forward. But when we sit mechanically, what happens is it straightens everything out, which means that all of a sudden, we're loading up the wrong parts of the bone with way too much stress, and your muscles do exactly what they're supposed to do. They protect. They start to tighten up like little steel girders. And let me ask you, if there's anybody like this, you get out of the car and you can't stand up at first. It takes you a step or two before you feel like you can stand all the way up. Does that sound familiar? Well, listen, one of the ways of protecting that is to make sure that we are actually sitting upright in that great position. Making sure that your headrest is in that high enough position so that the middle of your head is actually hitting against the headrest. I say that because, let me think, it's going to give you that reference point to keep your shoulders back against the back of the chair, and it's also going to allow you or keep you from rolling and hunching forward. We want to make sure that that seat's not straight up in the air. It should be tilted backwards just a little bit, just about 20 degrees. Now, there's some other suggestions for your seat, like the fact that, your knees should rest lower than your hips. I see kids do this all the time. They're using that thing as a recliner. They are just cruising down the road and they're doing this. It's a wonderful thing. I love that look. I'd break into low rider right now, but that's going to get me in trouble. But one of the things that oftentimes happens is all of a sudden their butt is way below their knees. That position, it looks really cool. Allows them to lean way back. The problem is that unfortunately, and I'm not even worried about them seeing down the road, but let me tell you, it destroys the low back. It causes you to wrench your neck forward, straining those neck muscles, that are supposed to be resting, sending them into overdrive to allow you to stay in that position. The headrest, hey listen, travel tips, let me tell you, most people miss this. If this is your one takeaway, I'm going to tell you, go out to your car, take that headrest, yank it all the way up to make sure that the headrest is hitting you in the middle of the back of your head. If in fact that headrest is too low, we've talked about this in our whiplash workshop, which you can see on our YouTube channel. What's going to happen is it's going to cause you, if you're involved in a whiplash injury, it's going to cause you not only to go back against the headrest, but it also forces you up. If the headrest isn't high enough, then guess what? Your head is going to be catapulted over the top of the headrest, magnifying the tearing of the tissues, not just in the front of your neck, but destroying those capsules or those balloons that are supposed to be holding the joints in place. So we want to make sure we're protecting ourselves, but that comes from setting up yourself properly. Now, obviously, you need to be close enough to the steering wheel that you can actually very gently and very easily hold on to that wheel. We run into a problem when we have to start to extend our hands out. When we start to have to, reach forward, because not only is the tendency to hunch forward, but on top of it, we start to fatigue the muscles. See, we want to be in that most relaxed position. If we can let our arms hang down by our side and just gently hold on to the wheel, that's wonderful. If we have to actually lift our arms and keep them outright like this, we're going to be wearing on muscles. And this is one of those events and activities that we're doing for an extended period of time. So the less energy we get to expend in the process, the more rested that we're going to be on the far end of this process. Shoulders should be back up against that board, the back of the seat. And then finally, we talked about the reclining already. Think about those kids leaning back like that. We want to make sure that we keep our seat upright at about 110 degrees. All right? Now, our legs, like I said, if in fact we're setting ourselves up properly, where our seat back is upright, where our arms are nice and rested down by our side, where our hips are actually up above our knees, you know what happens? it naturally puts our legs into the right position. We don't have to extend them too far forward in order to hit the pedals. In fact, like anything, we're already there. We're already positioned properly. Now, one of the things that most cars come with nowadays is that low back support. It's there support. It's to support the normal curve. That's what it's there for. It's there to pump it out. Now, I have to say, since I'm not quite sure who they use as the model for most of these, manufacturers, a lot of you, it's a matter of working with the seat itself. Now, for some of you, the low back support is just not going to hit you in the right place. There are aftermarket products that are absolutely wonderful out there to mimic that natural low back curve. For some, they also need to, because they have bucket seats and it actually drops themselves down way too far, they're able to use a seat wedge in order to actually help to tilt the hips and the pelvis forward, increasing the curve in the low back and naturally maintaining that position so that there isn't that additional mechanical stress and strain. The wonderful thing is all of these products are simple, they're easy in order to purchase online, and you can transfer it from one place to the other. So if you sell your car, you're not stuck with a loss of a product, you just simply take it and move it into the next one. All right? So as a means of a reminder, the turtle position we don't want. We want to see you upright. We want to see that nice, comfortable position in order to protect yourself as you're traveling. And if you're traveling by plane, listen, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter whether you're traveling for an hour, 3 hours. It doesn't matter what it is. We need to make sure that we're setting ourselves up properly. So some of the same techniques that we just talked about from the car also apply when we get into the plane. Now, unfortunately, things like the headrest aren't necessarily always available. Now, if in fact you do have a tendency of falling asleep on the plane, one added suggestion is making sure that you utilize a neck pillow. It's simple, it's easy, it's going to help to make sure that your head doesn't drop way down to your side. Now, for some of you who, I cringe when I see my babies here in the office. Parents come in and they bring them in, and all I can see is their head drop down like this to the side. Now, can you imagine being in that position for 2, 3 hours, 4 hours? Because the last time I checked on most planes, you can't lay totally flat. In fact, you can't even get close. So the tendency is, as I'm watching people on the plane and I see them falling asleep, well, that's that position. And if we're staying like this for 2, 3, 4 hours, we're training our body. In fact, we're fatiguing those muscles. And that's when we get off the plane with a whole new set of issues, because we have damaged tissues in that process. You want to make sure that you check any bags that you possibly can. I know it's a pain. I know there's additional costs, but let's do reality. You carrying a lot of that material throughout the different airports oftentimes is problematic. In fact, for many individuals, they've got those small carry-on bags that have wheels and they're able to wheel them behind them. Well, you're going to forgive me, tugging on this thing and wheeling it through the airport and having my spine twisted like this is never a good position. Lifting and twisting is a horrible position. And yet, we're going to engage in that. And listen, stranger things happen. You run into people. You hit stuff. All of a sudden, that little thing that you were trailing behind you now becomes a giant anchor that just twists you around. And if, in fact, listen, you have one of those heavier bags that you are going to be checking, do yourself a favor. Make sure that you lift properly, bend at your knees, don't be twisting, making sure that you're doing your part to protect that low back as you're getting that bag in and out of the car in order to get it to the check-in. while flying, you want to take the opportunity of making sure that you're setting up. You want to continue to hydrate properly. You need to make sure that throughout the course of the flight, you're constantly hydrating. And yes, a better choice is to purchase water before you get on. You're never going to be able to consume enough from the airline. Most flights, you're going to lose about a quart of water, if not even more, depending upon the length of the flight. And if you're consuming alcohol, that number increases. Unfortunately, the alcohol further dehydrates the system. One last thing is that we want to make sure that if we can, we also travel with a really tiny pillow for behind our low back. See, the airplane seats don't have a lumbar support, do they? No, they don't. But you know what? We can use a small travel pillow in order to mimic that and help to make sure that we're maintaining the curvature, taking stress and pressure off at the base of the low back. We want to avoid as many travel aches and pains as possible. We want to end up on the other end of our travel refreshed, rejuvenated, and having enjoyed that experience. The biggest part of this process is making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. Big thing is knowing, well, what's the norm? Where should I be positioning myself? From there, making those appropriate steps to protect yourself in the process. See, I love the fact that we get to also make sure that we prepare ourselves here in the office. Like any other sporting event, just like we talked about in the beginning, well, the greater we prepare ourselves, the better the outcome. If you plan on running a marathon, your time is only going to be as good as your training. And we need to make sure that we're training properly. Walking into travel, one of the best things that we do is just simply get checked. Making sure that if in fact there's subluxation present, making sure that if in fact there's issues that are going on, well, you're in that best possible position to withstand the stresses that come with travel. And we want to make sure that in that moment, your body is functioning at that optimal level to ensure that it's able to process all the stresses that come its way. So listen, just like I started this workshop, this conversation just a few minutes ago, I'm going to encourage you. Leave me a comment. I want to hear what was the one thing that maybe you don't do. Maybe you don't do, when you're traveling in the plane, the train, on the, in the automobile. What's the one thing that you're going to start doing? Share this information with your Facebook family. Help somebody else who doesn't know what you know now. Don't keep it to yourself, because there's other people out there that are doing the same exact thing as you do. And if we could protect them, that is awesome. Finally, like this video. Tell me that you appreciated, you enjoyed the information. I'm Dr. Joseph Baker from Lorimer Chiropractic Center.